Welcome to the Deep Dive. This deep dive is brought to you by Stonefly, a leader in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions.
That's right. And if you're looking for secure, ransomware-proof storage, then Stonefly sells air-gapped and immutable storage.
You can contact sales at stonefly.com to schedule a demo.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's pull back the curtain on something absolutely fundamental to your daily experience online, like how your computer and your browser actually know who to trust when you try to visit a website.
Yeah, it's that critical moment, that digital handshake that happens every time you see, hopefully, that little padlock icon.
Exactly. We're talking about the digital credentials websites use and how the big browsers, like Chrome, decide if those credentials are valid and, well, trustworthy.
And our mission today really is to unpack this whole hidden system of trust. We'll start at the very foundation. What are these digital IDs? Who issues them? And how does your browser even build a list of who it trusts? Then we'll zoom in specifically on how Google Chrome handles this, because they've made some significant changes recently across different devices.
Okay.
After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, the practical side of managing these digital credentials, especially if you're someone running a website.
Super important.
Then, critically, what happens when that trust breaks down? We'll look at some recent, pretty major examples where browsers have had to step in and take action.
Yeah, those are always interesting.
And finally, we'll connect all these dots to the broader picture, the rapidly changing landscape of digital security, including new threats from things like AI, and even how this plays out in the evolution of the cloud industry itself.
Wow, okay. So it's quite a journey. From the basics right up to the cutting edge of digital risk and tech.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it all starts with that simple signal that tells you, okay, this connection seems safe.
Which relies on these things called digital certificates.
Exactly. They're at the heart of it.
Mm.
Think of them as like the passport or maybe the ID card for a website. Their main job is to cryptographically tie a specific website address, a domain name like yourbank.com or whatever, to a public cryptographic key.
Okay, so it connects the name you type in with a specific key. Why is that key binding so important?
Well, that public key is absolutely critical. It's what enables encrypted communication using protocols like TLS, transport layer security.
Right.
When your browser connects to a site with a valid certificate, it grabs that public key from the certificate and uses it to scramble, to encrypt the data before sending it.
Okay.
And the crucial part is, only the website's server, which holds the secret corresponding private key, can unscramble that data.
Ah, so it keeps things private, like logins, credit cards.
Exactly. It ensures that sensitive information stays confidential and can't be easily intercepted and read by someone eavesdropping on the network connection.
Okay, that makes sense. A certificate proves identity and gives you the key for a secure chat. But how do we know the certificate itself isn't just a fake ID? Anyone could make one, right?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's where this essential layer of trust comes in, provided by organizations called certificate authorities, or CAs.
CAs, heard of them?
Right. These are organizations that are recognized and crucially trusted by the major players, browser vendors, operating systems. Before a CA issues a certificate, they perform different levels of checks.
Checks on what?
They verify that the person or company applying actually controls the domain name they want the certificate for. And depending on the certificate type, they might also verify the legal identity of the organization. They're essentially the trusted third parties, the notaries, issuing these digital IDs for websites.
Okay, so the website gets its certificate from a CA, my browser connects, gets the certificate, but how does my browser know that that specific CA is trustworthy and didn't just, issue a bogus certificate to a scammer?
That's the linchpin of the whole system. It relies on what's called a chain of trust. Your operating system, and importantly now your browser itself, comes preloaded with a list of root CA certificates that are explicitly trusted.
Like a built-in whitelist.
Exactly. These lists are called root stores, or sometimes trust stores. When your browser gets a website certificate, it doesn't just trust it directly. It follows a chain of digital signatures back up from the website certificate, maybe through one or more intermediate CA certificates, until it reaches a root certificate.
Okay.
Then it checks. Is this root certificate present in my trusted root store? If yes, and if the certificate itself is valid, not expired, not revoked, matches the domain, then the browser considers the connection trustworthy and secure.
Ah, got it. So it's like checking the passport issuer against a list of approved governments. If the issuer isn't on the list or the passport itself looks dodgy, expired, wrong name, then alarms go off.
That's a great analogy. And that's precisely when you see those scary warnings. Most commonly, your connection is not private. It usually means the browser couldn't trace that certificate chain back to a root CA it trusts in its store. Or maybe there's another issue, like an expiry date mismatch or a name mismatch.
So the browser recognizing the CA is absolutely fundamental. It's the bedrock of this whole web public key infrastructure, the WebPKI.
It truly is. It's a system built on delegated trust. We trust the browsers trust the CAs listed in their root stores, and those CAs, in turn, vouch for the identity and keys of the websites.
Makes sense. It's layers of trust. Now let's talk about Chrome specifically. They're obviously a huge player.
Okay.
How does Google manage this trust system? Do they just go with whatever the operating system provides, or do they have their own thing going on?
Well, this is where it gets interesting because Chrome has actually made a pretty significant shift towards having its own independent system for managing trust.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've introduced two key components, the Chrome root store and the Chrome certificate verifier.
Okay, what's the Chrome root store? Just Google's own list.
Pretty much. It's Google's curated set of root CA certificates that Chrome trusts by default. It's their specific, actively maintained list based on Google's own policies and their criteria for which CAs meet the bar for public trust.
And the verifier, is that just the software that checks against that list?
It's a bit more than just a list check. The Chrome certificate verifier is Chrome's internal engine, the logic that handles the entire process of evaluating a website certificate.
The whole process? Like what?
It includes checking that signature chain back to a trusted root, yes, but also verifying things like expiry dates, checking if the certificate has been revoked, making sure it complies with technical standards and constraints. It's the full validation process.
And why did they build their own? What was wrong with using the OS's system?
Consistency was a major driver. Before the verifier, Chrome mostly relied on the underlying operating system's certificate verification logic.
Right.
And that could lead to, well, inconsistency.
How so?
The same website, but the exact same certificate might be trusted perfectly fine on Chrome running on, say, Windows 11, but then you might run into weird errors or warnings on Chrome running on an older version of Mac OS or specific Linux distribution.
Just because the OS handled certificate checks differently.
Exactly. Or the default list of trusted CAs shipped with the OS might have differed slightly, or the verification logic itself had subtle differences. It created unpredictable behavior for users and was a real headache for website developers trying to ensure their sites worked reliably everywhere.
Yeah, I can imagine. Works on my machine is not ideal for web security.
Definitely not. So the goal of the Chrome verifier is to provide a single, common, predictable, and secure certificate verification process that behaves the same way, whether you're using Chrome on Windows, macOS, Chrome OS, Linux, or Android.
Making the web more reliable and secure across the board.
That's the idea. Uniformity simplifies things for everyone.
You listed a bunch of platforms there. Windows, macOS, Linux, Android, Chrome OS. What about iPhones and iPads? Does Chrome for iOS use this Chrome root store and verifier too?
That's the crucial exception. While the Chrome root store and verifier rolled out, starting with Chrome 105 on Mac and Windows, and later hitting Android, Chrome OS, and Linux around Chrome 114.
Yes.
It cannot be used on Chrome for iOS.
Why not?
It comes down to Apple's platform policies.
Yeah.
Apple requires all browsers on iOS, including Chrome, to use the underlying WebKit rendering engine and, relevant here, the iOS platform's built-in trust store and certificate verification mechanisms.
So Google isn't allowed to use their own system on Apple devices?
Correct. If you're using Chrome on an iPhone or iPad, the trust decisions, the certificate validation, that's all still being handled by iOS itself, not by Google's custom Chrome components.
Okay, that's a really important distinction for mobile users. Now, what about certificates that aren't from those big public CAs in the Chrome root store? Like, maybe a company uses its own internal CA for its own servers. Or maybe a developer adds a specific certificate to their computer's trust list manually. Does Chrome just ignore those?
No, it doesn't ignore them entirely. The Chrome certificate verifier does take into account certificates that have been explicitly marked as trusted at the local system level.
Explicitly trusted.
Yeah. So for instance, if a company's IT department pushes out a custom root CA certificate to all the computers they manage, making it trusted locally, Chrome will consider that during verification. Or if you, as a user, manually install a certificate maybe for a local development server and specifically tell your OS to trust it, Chrome will generally honor that decision too.
But it doesn't rely on the default OS list.
That's the key point. The verifier uses the Chrome root store, plus any certificates explicitly added to the local trust store by an admin or the user. It does not rely on the default set of CAs that just happen to come pre-installed with Windows or Mac OS.
Interesting. So deliberate local trust overrides, but inherited default trust doesn't.
Precisely. It prioritizes trust that's been actively configured over the baseline defaults provided by the platform vendor.
And how often does this Chrome root store, Google's own list, get updated? Is it pretty static?
No, it's actively maintained. Google typically pushes out routine updates to the Chrome root store roughly quarterly.
Okay.
And these updates are bundled into new Chrome browser releases. So keeping your Chrome browser up to date is also how you get the latest list of trusted CAs.
Makes sense.
However, they also reserve the right to do a periodic or, out-of-cycle updates if there's an urgent user safety or privacy issue that requires adding or, more likely, removing a CAE certificate immediately.
Like if a CA gets compromised or something.
Exactly. If there's a serious problem, they can act quickly. When a certificate is added or removed, that change becomes part of the next Chrome binary release that gets pushed out to users.
Okay, so for us regular users, the end result of all this complicated checking is hopefully seeing that little padlock icon and HTTPS in the address bar.
That's the goal. That's the signal that everything worked. When you visit a site, Chrome's Verifier does its checks against the Chrome root store and any relevant local trust. If the certificate is valid, it hasn't expired, it correctly chains back to a trusted CA root.
Then you get the green light or the padlock.
Right. You get the visual confirmation, HTTPS, the padlock. It indicates a secure connection has been established.
And if something is wrong in that chain, if the certificate is expired or from an untrusted source,
Then you get that big, usually red or gray warning page. Your connection is not private, or something similar. It's Chrome's way of saying, hold on, there's a potential issue here with the site's identity or security certificate. Proceeding might put your data at risk.
I know I've sometimes clicked on the padlock icon itself just to see what's there. What kind of details can you actually find if you dig in?
Clicking the padlock is a good habit for the curious. It should confirm the connection is secure, usually mentioning TLS, but it also gives you key details about the certificate itself.
Like,
You can usually see who issued the certificate, the name of the certificate authority. You can see the certificate's validity period, the start and end dates for when it's considered good.
so you can see if it's about to expire, maybe?
Potentially, yeah. And for certain types of certificates, particularly the ones called extended validation or EV certificate,
Anyway, what are those?
those involve a much more rigorous identity check of the organization by the CA before issuance. Historically, browsers used to display the verified legal name of the company very prominently right next to the padlock for EV certs, though that visual display has become less common now. Still, the info is often in the details.
Okay. Now, speaking of TLS, you mentioned it earlier and it came up again. I still hear people talk about SSL certificates all the time. Are SSL and TLS basically the same thing, just different names?
That's a really common point of confusion, and it sticks around in the language we use. Technically, no, they're not the same. TLS stands for Transport Layer Security. It's the modern, secure successor to the much older protocol called SSL, Secure Sockets Layer.
So SSL is the old version.
Exactly. And importantly, SSL itself is now considered insecure. It has known vulnerabilities. It's been officially deprecated by the industry, and browsers have actively phased out support for older SSL versions.
So any secure website I connect to today should be using TLS, not SSL.
Absolutely correct. Any site serious about security will be using TLS, preferably TLS 1.2, or even better, the latest standard, TLS 1.3, which offers significant improvements in both speed and security.
And browsers just won't connect using the old SSL anymore.
Pretty much. They've dropped support for the really old broken versions like SSL 2.0 and 3.0 entirely because they're just too risky.
Yeah.
So even though people often say SSL certificate out of habit, in today's world, they almost always mean a certificate being used with the TLS protocol. It's just legacy terminology.
Got it. So what specifically makes TLS better, more secure than the old SSL? What changed?
TLS introduced several key improvements over SSL. For starters, it supports stronger cryptographic algorithms or cipher suites for the actual encryption and decryption work. That's fundamental.
Okay, better math.
Better math, essentially, yes.
I guess.
It also provides more specific and detailed error messages if something goes wrong during the connection setup, which makes troubleshooting easier.
That's helpful.
And crucially, TLS uses much stronger methods for ensuring data integrity, making sure the data hasn't been tampered with while in transit. It uses something called HMAC, hash-based message authentication code, which is far more robust than the methods used in SSL.
So it's better at detecting if someone messed with the data.
Much better. Plus, the initial handshake process where the browser and server negotiate the security parameters for the connection was refined and made more secure and efficient in TLS compared to SSL. So, bottom line, using TLS is just essential for modern web security. Relying on SSL is asking for trouble.
Okay, TLS it is. Now, you also mentioned earlier that there are different types of certificates based on what domains they cover and also how much checking the CA does before issuing them. Can you break those down quickly?
Sure. Let's look at scope first, what the certificate secures. You have single domain certificates. Pretty straightforward. They cover just one specific website address, like www.example.com.
Simple enough.
Then there are wildcard certificates. These are really useful. They cover a main domain and all of its direct subdomains at one level. So a certificate for .example.com would secure www.example.com, blog.example.com, shop.example.com, and so on. Saves managing lots of individual certs.
Convenient if you have a lot of subsites.
Very. And then you have multi-domain certificates, sometimes called SANS certificates, for subject alternative name. These let you list multiple, potentially completely different domain names in a single certificate. Useful if a company runs several distinct websites like example.com, example.org, and sample.net.
Okay, so single, wildcard for subdomains or multi-domain. Got it. What about the validation levels? How much checking the CA does?
Right. This relates to the level of trust or assurance the certificate provides about the identity of the website owner. There are generally 3 levels. Domain validated, BV. It's the most basic level. The CA just verifies that the applicant controls the domain name, often through an automated process like responding to an email or putting a file on the website. It's fast, cheap, often free.
Let's encrypt.
Exactly. Let's Encrypt primarily issues DV certificates. They're fine for basic encryption on blogs or informational sites where proving a specific organizational identity isn't the main goal, but they don't tell you much about who is actually running the site.
Okay, next level.
Organization validated, OV. Here, the CA does more checks. They verify domain control, plus they verify the legal existence and basic details of the organization applying for the certificate. More business information gets included in the certificate itself. This provides a higher level of trust than DV.
Better for businesses, maybe?
Definitely recommended for commercial websites, yeah. It links the domain to a verified legal entity. And the highest level is extended validation, EV. This involves the most rigorous validation process. The CA performs an in-depth check of the organization's legal, physical, and operational existence according to strict industry guidelines set by the CA browser form.
And this used to give you the company name in the address bar.
That was the main visual cue, yes. The idea was to provide the strongest possible signal of trust and verified identity. While the special display is less common now, the underlying rigorous validation for EV certs still happens.
So for sites handling really sensitive stuff banking, e-commerce OV or EV gives users more confidence that they're dealing with a legitimate, verified business, not just someone who proved they own a domain name.
Precisely. It connects the technical security of encryption with the verified real-world identity of the site operator. That's crucial for building user trust, especially when money or personal data is involved.
Okay. Now, regardless of the type DV, OV, EV, single, wildcard, you said all certificates have a limited lifespan. They expire.
Correct. No certificate lasts forever. They all have a defined start date and end date.
And I've heard those lifespans have been shrinking. Used to be longer.
That's absolutely right. There's been a consistent push from the industry, especially driven by the CA Browser Forum and the major browser vendors like Google and Mozilla, to reduce the maximum allowed validity period for certificates.
Why shorter? Seems less convenient.
The main reason is security and agility. If a certificate's private key gets compromised somehow, a shorter lifespan limits the window of opportunity for an attacker to misuse it. If a cert is only valid for a year instead of, say, 3 years, the potential damage is contained much sooner.
Limits the blast radius of a compromise.
Exactly. It also forces website operators to rotate keys more frequently and encourages the adoption of automated certificate management, which makes the whole ecosystem more responsive and resilient.
So how long can they last now?
Historically, you could get certificates valid for 1, 2, even 3 years or more. But the current maximum allowed validity for publicly trusted TLS certificates is now 397 days, basically 1 year plus a little buffer for renewal.
Just over a year.
Yes. And there are ongoing discussions and proposals to shorten it even further. Some are pushing towards, believe it or not, maybe 90 days or even just 47 days in the future.
Wow, 47 days. That's really frequent renewal.
It would absolutely necessitate automation for almost everyone. But the security benefits are seen as significant.
So what happens if a website owner misses that 397-day window? They forget, or something goes wrong, and their certificate expires.
It's bad news. As soon as the certificate passes its expiry date, browsers will immediately stop trusting it. Anyone trying to visit the site will be hit with those prominent security warnings: your connection is not private, security risk ahead, etc.
Same warning as if it was from an untrusted CA.
Pretty much the same user experience, yes. The expired certificate can no longer reliably establish a secure connection. It breaks the trust chain, signals a potential security vulnerability, and seriously damages user confidence in the site. It can effectively take a site offline for many users.
Okay, that really drives home how crucial managing these certificates is if you run any kind of website or online service. How does someone actually do that? Keep track, make sure they get renewed, install them correctly.
It's a multi-step process, and yeah, traditionally it's been quite manual, which gets really challenging as you have more sites or servers.
What are the steps?
First, you need visibility. You have to know what certificates you currently have deployed, which servers they're on, what domains they cover, and critically, when they expire. This often involves digging into the certificate stores on your servers or using scanning tools.
Just finding them all can be a job in itself, I bet.
It really can, especially in large organizations. Then, when you need a new certificate, or it's time to renew an existing one, the process usually starts with generating a certificate signing request, or CSR.
A CSR, what's that?
It's basically your application form to the certificate authority. It's a standardized block of encoded text that contains your public key and information identifying you or your organization, plus the specific domain name you want the certificate for. You typically generate this CSR file on the server, where you'll install the certificate using tools like OpenSSL or specific server commands.
Okay, so I create the CSR file with my public key and domain info, and I send that off to the CA I want to buy the certificate from.
Exactly. You submit the CSR to the CA, usually through their website ordering process. They then perform their validation checks based on the certificate type you requested, DV, OV, or EV.
They check if I really own the domain or if my company is legit.
Right. Assuming you pass validation, the CA then digitally signs your public key and identity information. Creating the actual certificate, they send the signed certificate files back to you.
What files do I get back?
It typically includes your main server certificate, the entity certificate, and often one or more intermediate CA certificates. These intermediates form the chain, linking your certificate back up to the CA's trusted root certificate. You also absolutely need the corresponding private key that you generated alongside the public key in your CSR. The CA never sees your private key. You have to keep it secret and safe on your server.
Okay, certificate files, intermediate files, and my private key. Then what?
Then comes the installation part. You need to take those files and install them correctly on your web server. And this is where the manual process gets fiddly because it varies a lot depending on your server software.
Like Apache, NGINX, IS.
Exactly. Whether you're on Linux using Apache or NGINX, or on Windows using IS, or using a load balancer or CDN, you have to configure that specific software to tell it. For secure connections, HTTPS on port 443, use this certificate file, this private key file, and maybe this intermediate chain file.
Sounds like editing config files or clicking through admin panels.
It often is. You point the server config to the location of the files, restart the service, and then test thoroughly to make sure it's working correctly and browsers trust the new certificate.
And renewing is basically doing that whole dance again before the old one expires.
Pretty much. You generate a new CSR, usually using the same private key, though generating a new key pair is better practice. Submit it to CA for renewal, complete the validation again, get the new certificate files, and then install those new files on the server, replacing the old ones before the expiry date hits.
And you mentioned cleaning up old ones too.
Yeah, it's good hygiene to remove expired or unused certificates from your server's certificate store to avoid confusion and potential misconfigurations down the line.
Okay, I'm already exhausted just thinking about doing that manually for like dozens or hundreds of websites and servers, especially with certificates only lasting a year now. It seems incredibly prone to error. Someone will forget one.
You hit the nail on the head. Manual certificate management at any kind of scale is just not sustainable. It's incredibly time-consuming, tedious, and yes, highly susceptible to human error. Missed renewals are a common cause of website outages and security alerts.
So there must be a better way.
Thankfully, yes. The challenges of manual management, especially with the move to shorter lifespans, have driven the development and adoption of automated certificate management.
Automation. Makes sense.
There are protocols and tools specifically designed for this. The most well-known is ACME, which stands for the Automated Certificate Management Environment.
ACME, like the cartoon company.
Yeah, unfortunate name maybe, but it's the protocol that powers services like Let's Encrypt, which provides free DV certificates.
Okay, so how does ACME work?
Basically, you run an ACME client agent on your server. This agent talks directly to the CA's ACME server. It can automatically prove domain control, example by placing a specific file on the web server or making a DNS change, request a new certificate, receive it from the CA, and often automatically install it in the right place for your web server software.
So it handles the whole CSR generation, validation, issuance, and installation automatically.
Yes, and critically, it can also handle automatic renewal. You set it up once, and the agent will periodically check the certificate's expiry date, and well before it expires, it will automatically go through the process to get a new one and install it, all without needing manual intervention.
That sounds like a lifesaver for anyone managing websites.
It really is. Automation is pretty much essential now for efficiently managing certificates at scale, reducing the risk of errors and outages, ensuring compliance with standards, and just freeing up IT staff from tedious manual tasks. It's critical for maintaining continuous security and availability.
Okay, automation is key. Now, we've talked about how this trust system is supposed to work, with CAs issuing certificates and browsers checking them against root stores. But what happens when that trust is fundamentally broken? We've seen some significant news recently where major browsers, Chrome included, have had to take the pretty drastic step of removing trust from certain certificate authorities altogether. That's a big deal, right?
Oh, it's a huge deal. It's not something browsers do lightly at all. When a browser vendor like Google or Mozilla includes a CA's root certificate in their default trust store, they are placing immense faith in that CA.
They're delegating trust, like you said.
Exactly. They're trusting that CA to rigorously follow strict industry standards and procedures, the baseline requirements set by the CA Browser Forum when they verify identities and issue certificates. So when a browser decides to remove that trust, to essentially kick a CA out of the club, it signals a profound breakdown in that relationship. It means the browser vendor has lost confidence in the CA's ability or willingness to operate securely and reliably according to the rules. It reflects serious, often repeated concerns about their practices.
What were some of the recent high-profile examples of this happening? I remember hearing about Entrust.
Yes, the Entrust situation garnered a lot of attention. In late 2024, Google announced its decision to gradually distrust new public TLS certificates issued by Entrust after a specific cutoff date, which was November 11, 2024.
And why did they do that? What was the reason?
Google cited a pattern of compliance failures. They pointed to issues found during audits and ongoing oversight, where Entrust reportedly didn't address security concerns or implement required changes in a timely or effective manner. This pattern led Google to conclude they could no longer have sufficient confidence in Entrust's operations as a publicly trusted CA going forward.
So what did that mean practically for a website using an Entrust certificate?
It was a phased approach. For websites that already had a public Entrust certificate issued before that November 11, 2024 deadline.
The existing ones.
Right. Those existing certificates continued to be trusted by Chrome for the remainder of their validity period, which, as we discussed, could be up to 397 days. So no immediate breakage for them.
Okay, but what about new certificates?
That was the key part. Any website that obtained a new public TLS certificate from Entrust, where the issuance timestamp, specifically the earliest signed certificate timestamp, or SCT, was after November 11, 2024, those certificates would not be trusted by Chrome.
So anyone getting a new Entrust cert after that date would immediately get the "your connection is not private" warning in Chrome.
Exactly. Chrome users visiting those sites would see the big warning page. You could often click through it, but it breaks the seamless browsing experience, looks unprofessional, and raises major trust issues for visitors.
Which basically forces those website owners using Entrust to quickly switch to a different CA that is trusted by Chrome if they wanted their site to work properly.
Absolutely. It creates immediate pressure to migrate. It's worth noting, Entrust's response involved partnering with another CA, SSL.com. The plan was that certificates issued via Entrust services after the deadline would actually be issued from a new root certificate operated by SSL.com, thus inheriting SSL.com's existing trust status in Chrome.
Ah, okay, a workaround through partnership. Now that Entrust situation was late 2024. Were there other CAs facing similar actions more recently?
Yes, just a few months ago, in June 2025, Google announced another significant distrust action. This time, targeting root CA certificates operated by two other organizations, Chunghwa Telecom based in Taiwan and Netlock KFT based in Hungary.
Chunghwa Telecom and Netlock, and what's the plan for them?
Google stated that starting with the release of Chrome version 139, which is anticipated around August 1st, 2025, Chrome will no longer trust certificates that chain up to the specific root certificates of Chunghwa Telecom and Netlock that are currently included in the Chrome root store.
So similar impact websites using certs from those routes will start showing warnings in Chrome around August 2025.
That's the expected outcome, yes.
And were the reasons for distrusting Chunghwa and Netlock similar to the Entrust case? Compliance issues?
Very similar rationale cited by Google. They described a pattern of, quote, concerning behavior observed over the preceding year. This apparently included ongoing failures to meet compliance requirements, commitments made by the CAs to improve that Google felt were not adequately fulfilled, and just a general lack of measurable progress in addressing issues identified through audits and the browser community's oversight processes.
So again, a loss of confidence in their operational integrity.
Exactly. Google stated these patterns diminished their confidence that these CAs could reliably operate in accordance with the high standards required for inclusion in a public trust store like Chrome's.
It's important to clarify, though, does this affect all certificates issued by them? Like, what if a company uses Chunghwa for an internal private system?
That's a key distinction Google made. These distrust actions are specifically targeted at the public trust aspect, the root certificates included in the Chrome root store that are used to validate certificates for public websites. It does not apply to private PKI hierarchies, like those an enterprise might set up for internal use, even if they use technology from these vendors, as long as the root certificate for that private hierarchy isn't one of the ones being removed from the public Chrome root store.
Okay, so it's about public web trust, not private enterprise trust necessarily. What's the big picture message here from Google taking these actions against multiple CAs? It feels like they're really tightening the screws.
I think it sends an incredibly strong signal to the entire certificate authority industry and the WebPKI ecosystem. It underscores the immense responsibility that comes with being a publicly trusted CA.
That delegated trust again.
Right. Browsers like Chrome are acting as gatekeepers, protecting billions of users. By including a CA in their root store, they are effectively vouching for that CA's competence and diligence. When a CA repeatedly fails to meet the baseline requirements, struggles to fix problems transparently and effectively, or doesn't demonstrate a commitment to continuous improvement,
They break that trust.
they fundamentally erode that trust, and these actions show there are consequences. The message is crystal clear. Being a public CA isn't just a technical function. It demands operational excellence, robust systems, proactive preparation for incidents, transparency, and a culture of learning and accountability.
You have to provide value that outweighs the risk you represent.
That's a perfect way to put it. Trust isn't a permanent right. It's continuously earned through demonstrable adherence to standards and reliable operation. These actions are, in a way, necessary enforcement to maintain the overall health and trustworthiness of the entire system that secures the web.
It really highlights the delicate balance and the high stakes. Okay, let's shift gears now and connect this whole discussion about certificates, CAs, and browser trust to the even bigger picture of digital security today. What are some of the major emerging threats we're facing, and how does managing digital identity and trust fit into that?
Well, one of the most talked about and potentially transformative shifts is the rise of increasingly sophisticated AI systems, particularly what are being called agentic AI systems.
Agentic AI, what makes them different?
Unlike older AI models that primarily followed explicit instructions, agentic systems have a degree of autonomy. They can be given a high-level goal, and then they can break that goal down into subtasks, make decisions about how to achieve those tasks, and dynamically figure out what actions or code to execute along the way. They can learn and adapt their strategy based on the environment.
So they're less predictable, more capable of independent action.
Exactly. And that introduces entirely new kinds of risks and threat vectors we haven't really dealt with before.
Like what?
They can act as accidental insiders. Imagine an AI optimizing a complex cloud system for performance. It might, completely unintentionally, discover and exploit a subtle misconfiguration or vulnerability simply because that path allows it to achieve its optimization goal more efficiently, potentially accessing data or systems it shouldn't.
Wow, unintended consequences at machine speed.
Right. Or, more deliberately, they could be weaponized by attackers. Imagine AI agents designed to automatically probe networks, discover unknown zero-day vulnerabilities, chain exploits together in novel ways, and conduct sophisticated attacks far faster and more persistently than human hackers ever could.
That sounds daunting. You mentioned AI finding container escapes or editing game states and examples.
Yeah, those were some early illustrations of AI systems finding unexpected ways to interact with or manipulate their environments to achieve goals, sometimes benign, sometimes potentially malicious.
And you mentioned this idea of machine speed and machine patience.
Yes, that captures the asymmetry these systems create. An AI attacker doesn't get tired. It doesn't get bored. It can relentlessly probe defenses, trying billions of combinations, analyzing system responses, adapting its tactics, and patiently waiting for weeks, months, even years for just the right subtle change or vulnerability to appear that allows it to break through.
How do human defenders possibly keep up with that? It feels like an unfair fight.
It creates a huge imbalance. Our traditional defense mechanisms, human analysts reviewing logs, manually patching systems, incident response teams coordinating, operate at human speed. We need to evolve our defenses to operate at, or at least leverage, computational speed as well.
So what can we do? How do we defend against threats that are that fast, persistent, and adaptive?
It requires a multi-pronged approach, really doubling down on fundamentals, but augmenting them with new capabilities. Some key practical defenses include aggressive hardening. This is about minimizing the attack surface. Less code running, using memory-safe programming languages like Rust where possible, enforcing very strict limits on what processes can do, principle of least privilege, and using strong isolation techniques like sandboxing or virtualization. Make it harder to break in and limit the damage if something does.
Close the doors and windows.
Pretty much.
Mm.
Rapid automated patching. Speed is absolutely paramount. When a vulnerability is disclosed, AI attackers will find and exploit it incredibly quickly. You need automated systems to maintain an accurate inventory of all your software, identify vulnerable components instantly, and deploy patches across your entire infrastructure as fast as humanly, or rather, mechanically, possible.
Patching can't be a monthly chore anymore.
Not against these threats, no. Advanced instrumentation and monitoring. You need more than just looking for known bad signatures. You need sophisticated monitoring that looks for anomalous behavior, unusual patterns of access, unexpected changes to configurations or permissions, processes trying to escalate privileges, or access sensitive data. AI can actually help here too by analyzing vast amounts of telemetry data to spot subtle indicators of compromise that humans might miss.
Fight fire with fire. Use AI for defense, too.
To some extent, yes. And defense in depth. Don't rely on a single security control. Layer multiple defenses, network firewalls, intrusion detection prevention systems, endpoint security, strong multi-factor authentication, data encryption at rest and in transit. If one layer fails, others might catch the attacker.
Makes sense. Layers of security. Now, how does this connect back to our earlier discussion about certificates and trust?
It connects very directly through the concept of cryptographic agility.
Cryptographic agility. What does that mean?
It's essentially the ability of an organization and its systems to adapt, update, and replace cryptographic algorithms, keys, and certificates quickly and seamlessly without causing major disruptions to operations.
Why is that agility so critical right now?
There are two main drivers. First, as we've seen, algorithms don't last forever. New attacks are discovered, computing power increases, and what was considered secure yesterday might be vulnerable tomorrow. You need the ability to swap out a weak algorithm for a stronger one efficiently.
Okay, future-proofing.
Right. But the second, and much bigger driver right now, is the looming challenge of post-quantum cryptography, or PQC.
Ah, yes, the quantum computers that could break today's encryption. We hear a lot about that.
Exactly. The standard public key algorithms that underpin most of our secure communication today, things like RSA and elliptic curve cryptography, ECC, which are used in TLS certificates, SSH, VPNs, etc., are known to be vulnerable to attacks by large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computers if and when they become available.
So all that encrypted data could potentially be cracked open later.
That's the major concern. It leads to the harvest now, decrypt later scenario, where adversaries might be capturing encrypted data today, storing it, and waiting for the day they have a quantum computer powerful enough to break the encryption and read it. This is especially worrying for data that needs to remain confidential for decades, like government secrets, intellectual property, or long-term financial records.
So the race is on to switch to new types of encryption before those quantum computers arrive in force.
Precisely. There's a massive global effort underway, spearheaded by organizations like NIST, the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, to develop, standardize, and deploy new cryptographic algorithms that are believed to be resistant to attacks from both classical and quantum computers.
What kind of algorithms are these?
They're based on different mathematical problems that are thought to be hard even for quantum computers, things like lattice-based cryptography, hash-based signatures, code-based cryptography, and others. NIST has already standardized several PQC algorithms for key establishment and digital signatures.
Okay, so the new math exists, but switching everything over sounds like a monumental task.
It is an enormous undertaking. Migrating the entire global digital infrastructure from current crypto to PQC algorithms is arguably one of the biggest and most complex technological transitions we've ever faced. And doing it successfully absolutely requires cryptographic agility.
Because you need to manage both the old and the new systems side by side during the transition.
Exactly. You'll likely need hybrid approaches for a while, supporting both classical and quantum-resistant algorithms. You need the ability to inventory all your existing crypto, identify systems that need upgrading, deploy the new PQC algorithms and keys, test everything thoroughly, and eventually decommission the old vulnerable crypto, all while keeping everything running. It's like trying to rewire a skyscraper while people are still living and working in it. You need to be able to manage this diverse orchestra of algorithms and their life cycles effectively.
That sounds like a massive operational challenge, especially given what you said about manual certificate management being unsustainable even now.
You've nailed it. This brings us to what's often called the operational gap in cryptography. The sheer number, diversity, and complexity of cryptographic assets, keys, certificates, algorithms used by organizations today has exploded. We're talking hundreds of thousands, even millions of keys and certs scattered across on-premise systems, multiple clouds, container environments, mobile devices, IoT endpoints.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yet the operational practices for managing all of this crypto often haven't kept pace. Many organizations still rely on manual tracking and spreadsheets, fragmented tools owned by different teams, or just hope for the best. This simply doesn't scale and isn't resilient enough for the threats we face now, let alone the PQC transition.
So what capabilities do organizations need to build to bridge this gap and achieve that cryptographic agility? What does good crypto risk management look like?
There are a few critical capabilities. Visibility. First and foremost, you need comprehensive, real-time visibility. You have to know where all your cryptographic assets are, every key, every certificate, what systems depend on them, what algorithms are they using, when do they expire, who owns them. You absolutely cannot manage or secure what you can't see. This requires automated discovery and inventory tools.
Know your assets.
Foundational. Rapid incident response. If a vulnerability is discovered in an algorithm you use, or if a critical private key is suspected of being compromised, you need the ability to react fast. That means quickly identifying all affected systems across your entire environment and having the automated capability to rapidly rotate the compromised keys or certificates. Think cryptographic fire drills you need to practice this response.
Respond at machine speed again?
Ideally, yes. Lifecycle assurance. This means ensuring crypto assets are managed securely throughout their entire lifespan, from secure generation to proper usage according to policy, to automated rotation before expiry or based on risk, and finally to secure retirement or revocation. Given the scale, this absolutely demands automation to enforce policies consistently and eliminate human error.
Automation seems to be the recurring theme here.
It's non-negotiable for effective crypto management today. The goal isn't just to use quantum-resistant algorithms eventually, but to become a quantum-resistant organization, one that has the operational maturity, visibility, and agility to manage its entire cryptographic infrastructure effectively, respond to incidents quickly, and navigate complex transitions like PQC without breaking things.
And this impacts business continuity directly, right?
Right.
A crypto failure can halt everything.
Absolutely. A major certificate expiry, a key compromise, or even a poorly managed migration to a new algorithm can bring critical business operations grinding to a halt. That's why the PQC transition needs to be treated as a major business continuity planning event, not just a technical upgrade. Strategies like running new PQC algorithms in shadow mode alongside existing crypto to test performance and compatibility before fully switching over might be necessary.
It really underscores that security isn't just about having the best locks, it's about knowing where all the locks are, having the right keys, knowing who holds them, and being able to change the locks quickly when needed.
That's a perfect summary. It's about operationalizing cryptography effectively.
Okay, let's broaden out one last time. We've talked trust, certificates, Chrome, CAs, AI threats, crypto agility, PQC. How do all these dynamics play out in the wider evolution of the cloud computing industry itself? It feels like everything is changing so fast there, too.
It really is, and I think drawing parallels with the history of other major technology industries like telecommunications can be quite insightful here.
How so? Telecom's journey.
Well, think about telecom. It started as a revolutionary innovation, went through decades of growth and technological advancement, but eventually, basic voice and data services became largely commoditized, a utility.
Right, just dial tone and bandwidth.
And arguably, during that commoditization phase, as profit margins on the basic services got squeezed, there might have been underinvestment in ongoing security innovation and resilience at the fundamental infrastructure level.
Leading to potential problems later.
Potentially, yes. We saw incidents like the Salt Typhoon attacks reported in 2024-2025, which allegedly compromised major U.S. telecom providers' infrastructure, exploiting vulnerabilities in common network devices. It reached a point where the FBI was even recommending people use end-to-end encrypted communication apps instead of relying solely on the carrier networks for sensitive comms. That's a stark example of what can happen when a critical utility underinvests in security amidst commoditization pressures.
Okay, I see the parallel, and you're saying the cloud industry is going through a similar cycle, but much, much faster.
Exactly. Yeah. Estimates vary, but some suggest the cloud is moving through that innovation to commoditization cycle perhaps 7 times faster than telecom did. Cloud providers initially built their dominance on massive economies of scale and infrastructure, continuous software innovation, virtualization, containers, serverless, and crucially, deep operational expertise. They simply knew how to build and run massive, reliable, secure data centers better than almost any individual enterprise could.
That operational know-how was a key differentiator.
It absolutely was. But now AI is starting to change that equation.
How is AI impacting cloud operations?
AI-powered tools are increasingly embedding sophisticated operational knowledge. They can automate complex tasks like resource provisioning, performance tuning, security monitoring, incident remediation, cost optimization, essentially democratizing access to the kind of advanced operational practices that were previously the domain of hyperscale cloud providers' internal teams.
So AI makes it easier for anyone to run complex cloud setups.
It lowers the barrier significantly, yes. AI isn't completely replacing human experts. You still need oversight, strategy, handling novel problems, but it's automating away a lot of the routine complexity and shifting the human role towards managing the AI and the overall system policies.
You mentioned earlier this makes multi-cloud more practical, using services from AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, etc., all at once.
Precisely. If AI-powered tools can abstract away the underlying differences and provide a unified management plane across multiple clouds, it suddenly becomes much more feasible for customers to pursue a genuine multi-cloud strategy.
Why would they want to do that?
Several reasons. Flexibility. Use the best tool for the job from whichever provider offers it. Cost optimization. Play providers off against each other. Leverage spot instances, etc. Risk reduction. Avoid being totally dependent on a single provider. If one has an outage or a security issue, you have alternatives. Avoiding lock-in. Maintain negotiating leverage and the ability to migrate workloads more easily. AI-driven operations significantly weaken the traditional vendor lock-in that came from deep operational entrenchment with one provider's specific tools and APIs.
Okay, but this evolving cloud landscape must bring new challenges too.
Definitely. One huge area is the continued growth of IoT and robotics. This pushes computing power and data processing out to the network, edge factories, cars, hospitals, homes. Securing these distributed edge environments where the physical and digital worlds intersect is much harder than securing centralized data centers. The attack surface just explodes.
Right, physical access becomes a threat too.
Exactly. And combined with the threat of AI-powered attacks we discussed, the overall security imperative for cloud and edge environments is massively heightened. You need AI-augmented security solutions just to keep pace with AI-driven threats across this vastly expanded landscape.
So, in this rapidly shifting market, where is the value migrating? If basic compute and storage are becoming commoditized, like dial tone was for telecom.
The value is undeniably shifting up the stack. It's moving away from the raw infrastructure components, the virtual machines, the block storage, and toward the layers that provide orchestration, management, abstraction, and specialized capabilities on top of that infrastructure.
Like what kind of layers?
Things like multi-cloud management platforms that provide that unified control plane, AI operations, AI apps, tools that automate monitoring, alerting, and remediation, specialized databases or data analytics platforms, serverless computing frameworks, platforms for hosting and running large AI models, security services tailored for cloud-native environments, the emerging layer of AI agents themselves, which will orchestrate cloud resources to perform tasks.
So the money is in the software and services that make the underlying infrastructure useful and manageable.
Largely, yes. This naturally leads to increased price pressure and commoditization of the basic infrastructure as a service, IaaS offerings. At the same time, it allows for premium pricing for platform as a service, PaaS, and software as a service, SaaS offerings, or specialized services that provide significant value add. It also fuels the growth of specialized clouds. Clouds built specifically for certain industries, like finance or healthcare with specific compliance needs, or optimized for particular high-performance workloads, like scientific computing or AI training, or focused on meeting strict data sovereignty requirements in specific regions.
So going back to the Salt Typhoon telecom incident, that really serves as a stark warning for the big cloud providers today.
I think it's a critical cautionary tale. It demonstrates the danger of letting security innovation lag behind as a field commoditizes. Cloud providers built their reputations on being bastions of security and operational excellence. But as AI starts to abstract away some of their traditional operational advantages, and as the innovation cycle spins so much faster than telecoms ever did,
You can't afford to get complacent.
they absolutely cannot. They need to learn the lessons of Salt Typhoon very quickly. They must continue investing heavily in security, embrace AI-enhanced operations themselves, figure out how to lead and add value in the inevitable multi-cloud transition, perhaps by becoming the best orchestration layer, or differentiate through deep specialization in emerging areas of complexity, like providing the specialized infrastructure needed for quantum computing, or running the most complex AI models.
Otherwise, they risk just becoming the providers of the underlying commodity, the dumb pipes of the cloud era.
That's the potential risk, yes, while others capture the higher margin value in the layers above.
What does this mean for the people involved? Operations teams, customers, security pros.
Roles are shifting. Operations teams become less about manual configuration and more about strategic oversight, policy definition, and managing the AI tools. Customers become more like directors, orchestrating services across clouds using these sophisticated tools. Security teams need to become experts, not just in traditional threats, but in securing AI systems and leveraging AI for defense, working hand in glove with the operations and development teams. The entire industry structure is adapting as value moves upwards.
It's a massive transformation across the board.
Truly.
Wow. Okay. We have covered an incredible amount of ground today. Seriously. We started right down at the foundations, how trust gets built online with digital certificates, certificate authorities, and browser root stores.
Right, the basic building blocks.
Then we looked at how a huge player like Google Chrome manages this specifically with its own Chrome root store and Verifier, aiming for consistency but with key exceptions like on iOS. We got into the practicalities of certificate management, the different types, the shrinking lifespans, the absolute necessity of automation with tools like ACME to avoid painful outages.
The operational realities, yeah.
Then we explored what happens when trust breaks down, looking at the recent significant distrust actions against CAs like Entrust, Chunghwa, and Netlock, and the strong message that sends about accountability.
A crucial part of maintaining the ecosystem's integrity.
From there, we zoomed out to the evolving security landscape, the challenges posed by agentic AI operating at machine speed, the critical need for cryptographic agility, especially with the post-quantum transition looming.
Connecting the dots to future risks and preparedness.
And finally, we saw how all these threads weave together in the context of the cloud industry's rapid evolution, the parallels with telecom, the impact of AI on operations, the shift to multi-cloud, the rise of specialized clouds, and the imperative for cloud providers to avoid the commoditization trap by focusing on security and higher level value.
It's all interconnected, from that tiny padlock icon to the strategic direction of multi-billion-dollar industries.
And it's clear that all these technical details, all these industry shifts, ultimately shape your experience every single time you go online. They determine if you see that secure padlock, how well your personal and financial data is protected when you send it, and just how reliable and trustworthy the websites and cloud services you depend on actually are.
Understanding this hidden layer of trust and how it's constantly being challenged and reinforced is becoming more and more important for all of us living in this increasingly digital world.
It really does give you a whole new perspective on what's happening behind the screen with every click. Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. As these agentic AI systems we talked about become more capable and start acting more autonomously on our behalf, making purchases, accessing services, managing our digital lives, how do you think the fundamental concepts of digital identity and trust, these certificates and root stores we've discussed, will need to evolve? How will we ensure your AI agent is trusting the right services? And just as importantly, how will those online services be able to reliably verify and establish trust with your AI agent?
That is a fascinating and complex question for the near future. How do you give an AI agent a trustworthy passport?
Exactly. Something to ponder. This deep dive was made possible by Stonefly, a leader in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions.
And remember, if you're looking for secure, ransomware-proof storage, Stonefly sells air-gapped and immutable storage.
You can contact sales at stonefly.com to schedule that demo. Thanks so much for joining us for the deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll catch you next time.